If, say, Hamas or Hezbollah managed to simultaneously detonate the pages or mobile phones of Israeli reservists, whether or not they were on duty or not, wherever they happen to be, whoever happened to be around them, that would be rightly classified as an obscene act of mass terrorism. It would also rightly be judged to be a grave war crime. I'd also note that anyone who cheered on such an attack in the West would be liable for arrest under their country's anti-terror legislation. Now, today across Lebanon and reportedly in Syria, pages suddenly exploded with reports that more than 4,000 people so far have been injured, with at least 11 killed, including one 8-year-old girl named Fatima Jafar Abdullah. The reported targets was Hezbollah, which is two things: a Lebanese militia and a political party, which is part of the governing coalition in Lebanon. But it's not just Hezbollah fighters who use these pages. Reportedly, so do medics. I mean, we need more information on that. That's what the questions will be asking. Who actually has these pages, and does Israel know? Can they be sure who these pages belong to? We'll talk about that. But one widely circulating claim is that Israel intercepted a shipment of pages and then put explosives in them, remotely detonating them. Hezbollah uses these pages, or relies on them rather than mobile phones, to prevent Israel monitoring their activities. The other possibility I've seen, obviously, being discussed is some sort of cyber attack to remotely blow up these pages using their batteries. I'm not a tech expert here, but it strikes me as extremely implausible, especially given these pages appear to be primitive. If that were true, well, the implications of that would be even more terrifying, though they are terrifying enough, as we'll discuss. Now, apologists for Israel are in a frenzy of ecstasy over this. One example is Avi Meyer. He used to be the editor-in-chief of Jerusalem Post. He says, note, there are exactly 0 reports of anyone but Hezbollah personnel being wounded by the exploding pages. Whoever carried out this ingenious attack did so in a manner that specifically targeted the Hezbollah men and spared uninvolved civilians. Let's remember that. Now, Avi Meyer has a history of denial when it comes to the killing of children. He was the editor-in-chief of the Jerusalem Post when they posted false, disgusting claims that Palestinian parents were faking the deaths, the murders, the killing of their babies by Israeli weapons by using dolls. That's who this guy is. He's walked back this claim now. We have the confirmation, obviously, of at least one child being killed. But this underlines that this claim, it's a highly targeted attack on a terrorist group, is a nonsense. We can see the consequences. Indeed, I've watched the CTV footage of 2 attacks. I won't share them because otherwise YouTube will age restrict this video. One shows someone paying at a supermarket, paying for their goods, then their page explodes, clearly injuring people around them, and another in a market. You can see the same again. I can't show you the video, though, the consequences, because otherwise YouTube will age restrict this video and then limit the number of people who can watch it. But I can show you this video of the consequences of a pager explosion in someone's home.
Hello.
Well, you can see there that caused significant damage. You can see how if this exploded on a person, it could cause serious injuries and deaths to other people, in particularly if the reports are true that the attack happened after they received a message. So many would have taken the page out first. Now, you just have to ask yourself some basic questions about this attack, or rather series of attacks. And that's actually important. This is a series of attacks. By what definition are these targeted, legitimate military attacks? We know that Israel has an all-encompassing definition, for example, of Hamas, where junior officials, civil servants, public administrators, and so on are defined as Hamas and thus judged to be legitimate targets, and thus attacked, even if that kills their entire families. In this case, Hezbollah is a political party, as well as a militia, which is part of the internationally recognised government in Lebanon. Do we know who exactly has these pages? What is the legality of the attempt to commit the mass extrajudicial killing of so many people with no regard for what they have or have not done? And how is it at all possible to take any precautions to protect other people? Well, you can't, can you? Think of someone sitting on a crowded bus or train. Think of people driving cars or other vehicles. Think of people in public spaces like a supermarket. Everyone with a pager turns into a walking explosive and becomes a threat to everyone around them. According to the Geneva Conventions, indiscriminate attacks are prohibited. Indiscriminate attacks are those which are not directed at a specific military objective, those which employ a method or means of combat which cannot be directed at a specific military objective, or those which employ a method or means of combat the effects of which cannot be limited as required by this protocol. Well, you cannot possibly argue that this meets the terms of the Geneva Conventions. Now, a few things here. We all know what would happen if Israel had been on the receiving end of such an attack or series of attacks. If the phones or pages of Israeli reservists were attacked like this by Hezbollah or Hamas or Iran and exploded wherever those soldiers happened to be and killed and maimed children and bystanders, those cheering on this attack would be denouncing this as a despicable, outrageous act of terrorism. I would agree with them. If there was a similar attack on Israeli reservists as they went about their business in civilian areas, posing a grievous threat to those around them, I would condemn that as grievous terrorism. Some of us are morally consistent, you see. And this really does underline how terrorism is a term which is cynically redefined to mean violence used by the West's opponents. You see, when I pointed out on social media that this would be denounced as terrorism, were, say, Hezbollah the perpetrators and Israel the target, Israel's apologists responded en masse to say, yeah, but that's because Hezbollah are terrorists. Well, if Hezbollah had committed such an attack, the method of the violence and the consequences of the violence would be portrayed as central evidence that Hezbollah are terrorists. Terrorism is defined here by whether the violence is perpetrated by an opponent of the West. If it's committed by an opponent of the West, then it's terrorism. If it's done by Israel, then it's just a daring attack. You see, the hideous consequence of this can be seen. One doctor in Beirut reports, I smelled too much blood today and tried to stop many slaughtered body parts from bleeding, which was pointless. What we are going through is unbelievable. A Lebanese Amnesty International campaigner, Bissan Fakir, reports, my family and friends in Sur described surreal and shocking scenes, people running through the streets, women hitting their faces, mass confusion and hysteria, ambulances racing by, rescue workers crying. It's also worth noting here that the horrors the Israeli state has perpetrated against Lebanon go back decades. Like during the 1982 invasion of Lebanon, when the Republican president Ronald Reagan was so disgusted at the horrors being perpetrated by the Israeli army that he rang the Israeli defense minister to announce what he called a Holocaust. We're also currently in the midst of the anniversary of the days-long Sabra and Shatila massacre, when up to 3,500 Palestinian and Lebanese Shia civilians were massacred in Lebanon by Israel's allies, which the Israeli defense minister was found culpable for by an Israeli commission. This makes me think of the Dahir doctrine, developed by the Israeli state in 2006, which basically pushed for attacking civilian infrastructure, civilian targets, so civilians would turn against Hezbollah because of the price they were paying. That is terrorism, where you terrorize civilians for political objectives. Now, I seriously believe the Israeli state thought through the terror this would undoubtedly cause amongst civilians in Lebanon in an attempt to make them think that they must turn on Hezbollah in order to achieve the political end of rolling back the tide against Hezbollah. Now, this also further degrades international law. We are seeing the constant mainstreaming of serious war crimes by Israel, supported, made possible by the West, which will collapse the already disintegrating international order. Human rights abusing despots and organisations will all take note of this precedent now it has been granted the de facto legitimacy of the West. We're also staring through the portal of a dystopian future where technology can be harnessed so that anyone can be instantly located and targeted and killed. I fear this is where we are heading, and you can see how an inescapable totalitarian world could be built that way one day, where anyone who resists those forces with technology that just takes out anyone they deem an opponent like that. I mean, where's that technology going to be in 20, 30 years? Think it through. In any case, this is a terrorist attack. It is a terrorist attack, a deeply disturbing terrorist attack with hideous consequences. And we can see that Israel is attempting to stoke potentially a regional war with catastrophic consequences, and we're already seeing a catastrophe as is. As ever, the message is sent out to the world. Arab life doesn't matter. Well, a bitter harvest is being sown, and we will reap it for generations to come. Please like and subscribe. Do leave your thoughts, do your comments as ever, and help keep the show on the road at patreon.com/704. Listen to the podcast. I'll speak to you soon.